All right, welcome back to LouTube and this presentation on Algebra Review Part 2. I did a previous video on the first half, and this is the second part of the Algebra Review. And we're focusing here more on factoring. And factoring is, what is factoring? Well, factoring is really the process of making a multiplication question. And my writing here isn't the best, but making a multiplication question, okay? I'll leave it at a Q for question there. Sorry that that's not written better, but it's really hard to handwrite on a screen, so I'm doing my best. And I need to really get a tablet. I have one that will let me write and hopefully be a little better in these regards. Okay, so a common factoring is the first type of factoring that we're going to do, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to make this into a distributive property question. We're going to make it into a number and maybe letters out in front of a bracket and then an answer. So ultimately we're going to have a bracket system here and a number out in front, and that's what we're looking for. And the first thing you want to do is usually deal with the number parts. Okay, so we're going to deal with the number parts first, and then we'll deal with the letters after. So I'm looking for the greatest common factor, the number that would be the greatest common factor here. And in order to do that, I'm going to get my factors list out. Okay, so I'm going to go to another sheet here, document, and my factors list. And if I just flip back and forth here quickly, you can see the question, and you'd have your factor sheet sitting beside you. 18, 42, and 36 are my numbers, and I'm looking for the number that is the greatest common factor of each of these, essentially the number that will divide, the largest number that will divide evenly into all of these numbers. And so if I go to my factors list and I look and I see 18 is right up here, there, I'm going to highlight it. I'll draw on here as well. Well, maybe I won't because it doesn't look like it's going to let me. 18 is up here. Okay, I'll highlight it here somehow like that. And then I can see, 18, 9, 6, 3, 2 are all factors. And then I go to 36 and I see, 18 and 18, that's good. I like that. I also have 9 and I also have 6 as factors of 36. So those are all possible options. And then I go to 42 and I look, well, there's no 18, unfortunately, and there's no 9, but there is a 6. So 6 turns out to be the greatest common factor of all these numbers. And this is a skill you have to practice. You have to have your factor sheet with you if you're going to do this effectively. Okay, oops, accidentally clicked on something there. We'll close that. Go back here. And so at this point now, I know that 6 is the greatest common factor of all of them. And so I can write my 6 out front. And I'm going to deal with the numbers that go in here later. I'm going to just take my open bracket out there and deal with those numbers. But I now want to look at my letters. And I see I have an x squared. I have 2 x's here and x squared. And I have 1 x here, so there are x's, at least 1 x is common, but unfortunately there are no x's here, so I don't have a common x here. But notice I have a y here, and a y here. So y is common to all 3 terms. Therefore, I can write a y out in front. And what that essentially means is that I'm going to divide each of these by 6, okay? Each number will get divided by 6, and I'm going to take a y off of each one, but the x's will stay because I wasn't able to take an x out. So 18 divided by 6 is 3, and the x's stay behind, x squared. And that means that when 6y multiplies by 3x squared, I'm going to get 18x squared y, which is the original question. Then I'm going to add here, put a plus sign because it doesn't change. 42 divided by 6 is 7, and an x stays behind, okay? And then last but not least, I have my minus 36 divided by 6 is going to be 6, okay? And I close my bracket there. That is common factoring. I don't need to factor the trinomial here. It does not ask that. It only asks me to common factor. And this is where if students use one of the math apps on their phone and ask it to factor, it's going to factor this even if you don't ask it to. And that's where you're going to get messed up because I'm not asking you to do that. I want this answer here. I'm not asking for further on. Okay, so that is our first common factoring question. Now, other questions I'm going to do are going to incorporate some of the stuff from the last part 1 review, and that is we're going to find common like terms, and we're going to collect the like terms. That's why it says here, look at here, simplify by collecting the like terms, and then common factor. So we're going to simplify by collecting the like terms. So what I do is I'll use like a different color here. The green and green, these guys are like terms. So I can bring these two together, okay? And that gives me 2x squared. Well, let's use black here. Let's write the thing here in black. 2x squared, okay? Then I have x's. Do I have any x's? Yeah, let's do those also in green, but I'll double underline them. And they come together to give me minus, whoops, I gotta go black line again, minus 8, okay? And that's because 3 subtract 11 is minus 8x. And there's an x on each of those. And then finally, I'll use red this time, my constants, 4 and 10, add together to give me plus 14, okay? Now I look at this question and say, is there any common factors here, okay? And I can see that 2 times 1 will have, those are the factors of 2, and I have 2 times 4 for factors of 8, and 2 times 7 for factors of 14, okay? So if I'm looking at each of these terms, I can see that. You can go to your factors list and look those up again if you want to. I mean, you can literally come here and look up those numbers. You got to have 2 up here is 2 times 1. What was the other one? 8, 1 times 8 and 2 times 4, and then finally 14, which is 2 times 7. And 2 is your common factor there, okay? So going back here, we can now write an answer where we bring 2 out front, divide or take that 2 out, you're left with x squared. Divide 8 by 2, you're left with 4x, and divide 14 by 2, and you're left with plus 7, okay? And this is the answer I'm looking for. I'm only asking you to common factor. Again, if you're using your app on your phone, whatever it is, they're probably going to try and factor this again, and that's going to give you a problem if it does do that and factors it into 2 binomials. I'm not asking for you to do that, okay? Now, the next step is to factor trinomials, and that's really what we were just doing there, okay? In this case, you will always get questions that you are only being asked to factor if you have a, sorry, this question's incorrect, I think. So that 7 must be a 9. I'm just going to change that for a minute here. I'll make sure that on the sheet that you get, it is a 9, not a 7, okay? So I'm just going to change that. It's not going to work. Must have been an error on my behalf. And then we'll go back to the drawing board here. And we're into draw mode. So now what happens is we have to factor this trinomial, okay? And in order to factor the trinomial, I have taught you in the following fashion. You must do 2 brackets. Put your 2 brackets in. That's going to give you a mark just for doing that, recognizing that you're making 2 trinomials. Then you're going to do an x in the front, an x here. Okay, that will work. The next step is to determine your signs. Okay, in this case, it's plus and plus, which tells me this will be plus and this will be plus. Okay, I'll raise those circles here. Okay, and the last step is to determine the numbers that are going to go in here. And you want the factors of 14 that will add to 9, okay, in this case. And every one depends on whether it's plus or minus here, like we've gone over it in class, will determine whether you're looking for adding of the factors or you're looking for the difference or subtracting of the two factors, okay? Difference meaning take the difference between the two numbers. Now I'm going to go to my factors list again, and here's 14. What are the factors? Right here. 1 times 14 and 2 times 7 are the two factors, okay? Well, the question now I would ask you is 1 times 14, what if you add those two numbers, you get 15. If you add 2 and 7, you get 14, or you get 9, sorry. 2 plus 7, 2 times 7 is 14. 2 plus 7 would give me 9. And those are the pair that I'm looking for. And what I've always encouraged students, get back to my original question, is that the larger number should go here. So 7 and 2. And that would give me my two binomials. What I've done is I've changed this trinomial into a question that would be two binomials multiplied by each other. And so we said that factoring is making a multiplication question. That's exactly what this is. It's x plus 7 times x plus 2. And the brackets signify that they are two binomials. Now, if you get a question with a number out front like this one, and B, you must factor that number out first. You must get rid of it. And so in this case, it's going to be 3 bracket, and I'm going to divide everybody by 3. This will be divided by 3. This will be divided by 3. This will be divided by 3. Okay? And we'll go through this. This will be now going to be what is it? X squared, because we divided by 3, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So it just leaves me with x squared, which is what we want. Those are the only style that you're really able to factor. 9 divided by 3 would give me plus 3x, and 28 or 48 divided by 3. What is 48 divided by 3? And some students will really struggle with this. We'll get your calculator out if you want and go, 84. I said 48 before, I think. 84 divided by 3 equals 28, okay? I already knew the answer because I made the question, but I wanted to just show you that. And then you go minus, so I'm going to go back here to choose my color again, minus 28. Now I can factor this portion here. I can factor this here, okay? And so when I go equals, I'm going to go 3, and then I'm going to go bracket, 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 bracket. I'm going to throw my x's in, Now, when I have a minus here, there's only one way you can get a minus answer. One has to be plus, one has to be minus when I multiply. And the bigger number is going to be plus, so I'm going to put my plus out front and my minus out back. And I'm going to put my bigger number here. But I'm looking for factors of 28, okay? Factors of the number 28 that have a difference of 3. In other words, if I take the difference between them, subtract the smaller one from the bigger one, I need 3, okay? So I go back here to my factors list. You can see how often I'm referring to my factors list over and over again. That's why you can't survive in this part of the course very easily without it. And I look for the two numbers that have a difference of 3 out of 28. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, it's going to work. Here I am on 28 right there. And if I go like this, I see the difference of 1 and 28 is 27. That's not 3. What's the difference between 2 and 14? Well, 14 take away 2 is 12. That's not going to work. Take the bigger number, subtract the smaller number. 7 minus 4, that's 3. So there's bingo. There's my pair that will give me a difference of 3. Okay, so I grab my sheet and I go back to the other one. I'm doing it on my computer, but you can do it on your paper. And I say to myself, okay, what is the two numbers are 7, right? We determined the two numbers to be 7 times 4 is going to give me 28, and they have a difference of 3. The bigger number goes here, the smaller number goes here, and I have my answer right here. Don't forget to include the 3 out front. That's a common mistake. You will lose a mark if you don't include the 3 out front, okay? Now, the last type of question you might see, and I made one up just for fun, is one of these, what they call difference of squares. And in class, you would have learned that there are perfect squares. Well, what are those perfect squares? They're 1 times 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, and dot, dot, dot. Okay? When you have one where you have x squared minus 25 in this case, 25 is the next one. It's 5 times 5. And then what you do is you go bracket, bracket, you go x, you put a plus, x, you put a minus. And this time it's the square root of this number, which is 5. So x plus 5 times x minus 5. These ones are relatively easy. They're easy to identify because they are the only ones that are binomials. They're just 2 terms. And what ends up happening here is if you were to go back and multiply this out, this becomes 5x. Oops, 5x. And the other one term becomes minus 5x. And those cancel each other off, giving you 0. They disappear. And so you don't have a middle term in here. It's just x squared, x times x, and 5 times 5 minus to give you the answer. We call these difference of squares. And that is the end of the review for the unit on Algebra Part 2. I hope you liked it. And do your worksheet, get practiced up, and get ready for that test. Okay, the end of the line.